5, 6, 7, 8.
Welcome to the EX podcast, where every week I talk with business leaders, authors, and disruptors on how the workplace is changing. This podcast brings a different lens to the conversation around HR transformation, company culture, and employee engagement. It offers a brand and customer experience perspective rather than a traditional HR perspective. Why? Because companies have to think of themselves as employment brands if they hope to attract and retain talent. It is time we put people first to rehumanize the workplace. Simply because leaders who don't care about their employees will eventually be surrounded by people who don't care about their business. Today's guest is Kristen Hadeed. She is the founder of Student Maid, the author of the book Permission to Screw Up, and an acclaimed speaker. And to tell you the truth, her first TED Talk has received over 3 million hits on YouTube. Today with Kristen, we talk about how she's built a people-centric culture around trust, accountability, and empowerment. We talked about some of her biggest screw-ups and what she learns from them, how she approaches coaching and mentoring with her employees, and how she created a culture of belonging and camaraderie when her employees rarely spend time in the office. Support for this podcast is brought to you by Culture Amp. Eliminate the guesswork of company culture with Culture Amp, the world's largest independent employee feedback platform. Culture Amp goes beyond aggregating survey results to deliver rich insights and data-driven action plans on an easy-to-use interface. With a powerful platform, science-backed surveys, and a focus on its customer success, Culture Amp helps you increase employee engagement and build a positive company culture. Start developing a deep understanding of your employees' experience today by visiting cultureamp.com/ex. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Kristen, and because it takes a good amount of time to produce this podcast, please make sure to review the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, or YouTube, as it would help promote the content. If you want me to speak at your next event, get some advice on your EX initiatives, or send me feedback and suggestions for future topics or guests, you can reach me at svincent@exsummit.com or on Twitter at @EX_summit. All right, let's get to it. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the EX podcast. Very excited for today's guest, Kristen Hadeed. Kristen is calling from Gainesville in Florida. She is the founder of Student Maid, the author of the book Permission to Screw Up, which I love, and an acclaimed speaker. And just to give you an idea, her first TED Talk has received about 3 million hits on YouTube. We'll see if we can beat that record today. Kristen, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be here.
So let's start with the why and why you started Student Maid. What is your role on a day-to-day basis and what the company does?
Well, I never thought I would own a business. I was in college. I was 2006. I was at the University of Florida in Gainesville. Very lost, changed my major multiple times, thought I would move to New York to work on Wall Street. And then one day I was at the mall and I fell in love with this pair of jeans. And it sounds so silly, but I saw these jeans and I had to have them. I didn't have any money. And I thought, what is something I can do to just make enough money to buy this pair of jeans? And the first thought that I had was I would clean someone's house. And so I put an ad on Craigslist. A woman hired me. It was a complete disaster. I had no idea what I was doing. She had a huge 4,000 square foot house. But somehow, after that experience, she said, hey, I really need help. I'll hire you to come every week. She taught me how to clean. And that was kind of how my business started. So it wasn't intentional by any means. And then she told her friends about me. Next thing I knew, I was cleaning houses every day, in between classes, after classes. But the real turning point happened right before my senior year, when I got a contract to clean hundreds of empty college apartments. And so this is when I actually hired a team of people. I hired 60 people to help me with the work. And it was so challenging. You know, if you think about a business where the work that you're doing is not glamorous at all, and it's really hard to make people feel inspired when they're cleaning toilets, you know, and it was just a really challenging experience when I got that contract. And I think it was that challenge that made me really excited to try to figure out how to make this business work. So I ended up turning down a job in finance, and here we are. It's almost been 12 years since I've had the company. It's changed a lot. So we still clean, and we also offer concierge services like dog walking and pet sitting and that kind of thing. It's called Student Maid because we hire primarily students, but also that includes students of life. So, you know, don't necessarily have to be in school or enrolled in school to work in our company. But everything that we do is about empowering the next generation of leaders. So while our students are cleaning, they're actually taking classes and learning skills that will help them outside of work and when they move on from Student Maid. And so my role now in the company, I'm the chief vision officer. So I am really looking big picture. Where are we going? Are we positioned to really get there? And what I spend most of my time doing is actually helping other companies create similar environments and cultures like we have at Student Maid.
How many people do you have right now in the organization?
We have about 50 people in the company now. And I think I'm really glad you asked this question, because there was a point in time when we had 500-600 people and things had grown so much. And I walked into my office one day and I remember thinking, where am I? You know, this is not the company that I want to be in. And it was like our culture had completely changed. People who used to love coming to work did not have smiles on their faces. People were not engaged. And what I realized is we had grown so fast, and that's what you learn in business, right? You have to grow, and make more money and hire more people. And what we had done is we signed all these big contracts working with customers who paid us well, but didn't really treat our people well. Really hard work, really terrible working conditions. And so we made the decision to downsize. And it was the best decision we ever made because it saved our culture. And then we came up with a new business model, which is to help other companies emulate the environment that we have. And that's actually the most profitable arm of our business.
So do you work outside of Gainesville in different places in the U.S.? How does it work?
Well, for cleaning, we only have the one location in Gainesville, Florida. But as far as helping other companies and businesses, it's all over the world. We've done work with companies outside of the United States. So that's what I spend most of my time doing. And it's all about how do you create a culture, you know, where there's trust and where people really feel like they belong and they really understand how their work impacts the big picture and they're inspired to come to work. And I think, we spend so much time at work. So it's so sad to think that there are people in the world who don't like coming to their jobs. And so we're hoping that we can just make a small dent in that and do what we can to change that.
What do you do and how do you help other companies then?
Well, it looks differently. Sometimes it might be consulting. So going in and actually evaluating the culture and figuring out, what do we need to do to make the environment better. And I will say that most of our clients already have amazing culture. That's just how do we take a team that's already really strong and a culture that's already great and make it even better. So sometimes it can be consulting. Other times it's just coming in and doing like a talk or a workshop or a series of workshops. So it's very customized based on what the company needs. But something that's really big at Student Maid is leadership development. And like I mentioned earlier, our students take classes where we teach them all these skills that don't have anything to do with cleaning, but have everything to do with success in life, like how to build relationships and how to handle and accept feedback and give feedback and how to find your strengths and actually use them in your job. And they're paid to take these classes. They're required. And so I think what other companies are realizing is we have to invest in people, and we have to teach them things that will help them in their lives and in their careers. And so a lot of what we do is we help companies figure out how to do that, how to create these leadership development programs like we have.
So let's talk a bit more about this, because there's a big gap between how colleges and universities prepare students to working life and how it is actually when you actually hit the ground and you start working for a company. I don't think that education prepares well young people to actually work in an organization in a very well-defined environment. How do you approach this when it comes to coaching some of the students working with you and so forth? How do you prepare and mentor them so that when they hit the job market, they're ready from a early employee perspective and not just from a student who just discovering what the workforce is like?
Mm-hmm. I wish you could see me because I'm shaking my head. I agree with you. We don't, but yes, what we learn in school is important and it's a really great foundation, but the skills that really determine whether or not we're successful, the soft skills, like we don't learn that. And so I think what I realized is if I want people to do a job, I have to look at everything that I'm asking them to do, and I can't expect that they know how to do any of it. It's my job to give them all the tools and all the training to do this. And so for me, it's not just cleaning. It's what else are we asking them to do? So for example, we're asking them to call clients when they're on the way to the home to clean. So something like that, it seems so simple, calling a client, but I can't assume that anyone in my company knows how to make a phone call and a professional phone call, especially when you're thinking about the fact that we hire people who grew up building all relationships from behind text messaging and email, and so that's how it started. It was, what are we asking people to do? And let's make sure we have something in our training that teaches them how to do that. And what we realized is the more that we spent time on those soft skill things, the more that people were engaged. They wanted more of that. They felt like they were becoming better people. And so we started really honing in on that. The core things that we teach are relationships and how to build meaningful relationships. We teach vulnerability, listening, empathy. We teach that we focus a lot on technology and how, yes, technology has made us very efficient and productive, but what it's also done is it's kind of replaced the interaction we're supposed to have as human beings. And so what can we do to be more human in our interactions with one another? And actually, we don't text or email at Student Maid. Everything that we do, if it's some kind of conversation that has any importance, it's on face-to-face or on video chat. So we invest a lot in what's happening. We didn't do it for any reason other than to help our students thrive in their lives. But what's happening now is we have graduates who have left the company, have gone out into the real world for years, and now they're writing us and saying, what I learned at Student Maid totally changed the trajectory of my career. And we're hearing about people who've started their own companies and 25-year-olds who are leading teams of 120 people because of the leadership skills that they learned. So what we need to do is a better job of really measuring what we're teaching people so that we can give them something tangible to talk about in their job interviews and things after they leave us.
You've built quite an impressive people-centric culture around trust, accountability, and empowerment. Can you share with us how it comes to life on a daily basis?
Yeah, so I think trust is at the foundation of everything we do. And I believe if you don't have trust, it's hard to have anything else. So how do we build that? For us, it looks like, number one, we really empower people to make their own choices. So when someone has a question or a challenge on the job, we do not answer their question. We do not give them the solution. We say, we trust you to make whatever choice you feel is best. And with that, I think comes the fact that people are going to fail and they're going to make decisions that maybe you wouldn't make. And yes, some of those decisions may cost customers and they may cost the company money. But my belief is that if we don't let people fail, they'll never learn. and they'll never grow. And if you keep everyone in bubble wrap all the time, how can your company ever really grow and reach its potential? So we trust people, and when they fail, we stand by them. They don't have to worry about losing their job as long as it was a decision that was made, from the heart, and it wasn't made from greed or selfishness. And we ask them, how will you do it differently next time? And as long as you grow from this experience, we're good. And so I think that's a huge component. And then the other piece is authenticity and really feeling like you can bring your whole self to work. And I think for whatever reason, we seem to, in business, think that we have to leave our personal stuff at the door, and that when we're at work, it's only work. And I disagree strongly with that. I think that human beings walk around with everything. And if we can create a space for people to talk about what's going on in their lives, I think that we not only build connection, but people feel like they can actually be who they are. And so we do something every day called a personal check-in. And this is how any conversation, any meeting always starts with a personal check-in. And basically everyone in the room just shares what's going on in their life. It's like 1 minute, each person shares. Some people talk about things that are happy and going well. Some people talk about things that aren't. Some people say they need help. And we encourage our students, when they're working in teams of 2, cleaning a house, to always start their day with a personal check-in. And we start every single conversation that way. And I think the message it sends is we care about you before we care about the business that we have to do or have to discuss. So those are empowerment, letting people fail, and then really bringing in that personal piece and creating a place where people can be authentic.
You talk a lot about your past screw-ups when you either talk in public or with companies. Can you share with us maybe the one or the 2 stories that made the biggest impact on your leadership style?
Oh, I have so many, and I'm still screwing up. Well, there's one big one that for sure impacted me more than I think any of the others. And that was really early on in the business. It was right when I got that big contract that kind of made the company a real company. I had hired 60 students to help with this. I mean, we had like 800 apartments to clean. I think we had 21 days to do the work. And I was 21. I had no leadership experience. I had no idea what my role was in this contract. So the first day I gave everyone their assignments. They went off and they cleaned, and I remember just sitting in this chair in the middle of the apartment complex, like clubhouse, like the office of the apartment complex. I was just twiddling my thumbs. Like, what am I supposed to do? I don't know what my role is. And this went on for a couple of days. And finally, the team just had enough. The work was not fun. The pay was not great because I couldn't afford to pay people much more than minimum wage. And then I was a terrible leader. I didn't even know anyone's names or anything. And so 45 of the 60 ended up quitting at the same time, like 3 days into the contract. They walked into that clubhouse where I was sitting and they said, "We're done." And I think having 45 people walk out on you, no matter how old you are, is like really traumatic.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But these were my peers. These were people who were my age, and I was mortified and angry. I remember thinking, how could they do this to me? And then I panicked because I had all this work left to do, and I didn't have many people left to do it. And I ended up getting them back. I got them back by calling an emergency meeting at my house that same day. And I opened up to everyone. I said, look, I don't know what I'm doing. I clearly messed up. I was vulnerable. And by the way, I got them there because I promised everyone an early paycheck if they showed up. So these were all very broke college students like me. So everyone showed up. So they came back, and that was such a profound moment for me for a couple reasons. One, I think that's what really made me obsessed with learning how to be a better leader, and put me on this path where I really knew I had a lot of growing to do. But 2, I realized the power in admitting you don't know what you're doing. And I think in leadership, we feel like we have to be strong and always have the answers and always have it together. And when we do that, I think we push people away. And I think when we can just be honest and admit weakness, people really want to help us, and we invite them in to be a part of what we're doing.
You have a young workforce, as you mentioned earlier. How do you approach coaching and mentoring with your employees, not only because they're young, but also because they're not going to stay necessarily for a long time, as many of them are college students? So how do you approach coaching and mentoring with them?
Yes. So the cleaning industry has a really high turnover rate. The average is 75%. And our students, we hire as young as high school. And so some of our students stay with the company through high school and college, some through college, and so the average student is probably with us for 2.5, 3 years, which for the cleaning industry is actually quite good. The catch is that they have to leave. So when they graduate from school, we nudge them to move on and start their life, and sometimes they don't want to. And if they need help just figuring it out, or they need more time to figure out what they want to do, they're welcome to stay. But sometimes they have a plan and they love Student Maid and they don't want to leave. And we have to say, you got to go. You went to school to be a mechanical engineer, you got to go do that and not clean toilets. But I've never had, people always ask me, oh, how do you deal with millennials? And we hire Gen Z. How do you deal with Gen Z? I've never once looked at my company and thought, how are we going to make this work with millennials? I've never really brought the generational piece into it. I just look at people who really want to be invested in and really want to work in a place where they feel cared for. And so we invest so much of our profit into these classes. And I think what's important is that we do it knowing that they're going to leave and knowing that it's not going to be very long until they leave. And I think that sends a really powerful message to people that, look, we know that you're moving on, but we're going to do this anyway. And we're going to invest in you anyway. And what happens is when you do that, then people don't want to go. They don't want to leave. So yeah, I guess I just it's the golden rule. Treat people the way that you want to be treated, and try not to think about how long they're going to be there or what's in it for the company. Just do what you would want done for you, and you'll find, I think, that people won't want to go anywhere.
I enjoyed reading your article on LinkedIn that you posted earlier this year, I think, about how to engage with your leadership team. You did an offsite in Mexico, I believe.
Yes.
Can you share with us some of the things that you did that were maybe a bit unusual for a retreat?
Yeah, so we, as an executive team, we go on an offsite at least once or twice a year. And it's really important for us because our whole exec team is remote. So it's very critical for our relationship, as a team, to really take that time away. And we always do a few things. So we always start every offsite with a 360 review where everyone comes with their strengths and weaknesses. And we really try to dive deep into that and figure out where we each need to grow to be better leaders and be better for our team. And I think it's a great way to open up because it just always leads to such a great conversation. We always read a book before the retreat, and then we discuss it at the offsite. So this time we read Dying for a Paycheck, which, oh my goodness, really good, but sad. It basically, it's about employee wellness and how organizations are doing things that really harm wellness and health and well-being. And so we discussed that. And then we did this exercise based on a book called Best Year Yet, which was great. And basically you reflect on the last year, what your failures were, what your accomplishments were as a company, what your lessons learned, what lessons you learned, what your limiting beliefs were. And then you sort of take what you learned and what didn't go well, and you reposition yourself for the current year to be successful. And you set goals, and you create like a mantra. And so we spent 2 days doing that. Our offsite this time was a full week. And people always say, how can you get away that long? And I just think it's so important. We have to work on our businesses, and we're so busy working in them. And it's like this hamster wheel. We always have so much to do that we don't take the time to stop, reflect, really strategize. And I think if you can do that more, you'll notice that things will move a lot faster. Yes, it's a big investment, but I think imagine getting your whole team away for 3-4 days to really focus on something. Imagine what impact that would have.
Sure. Going back to that 360-degree reviews, Is it a group review, or do you do one-on-one reviews with every member of your team?
Well, we have a small executive team. So for us, it's a group. And if the way that it would work, I always start, so I'll give 2 weaknesses that I think are really holding me back, holding the team back, that I'm responsible for. And then everyone will comment on those. And then they will share any other weaknesses that they have for me. And then I'll talk about my strengths, and same thing. They'll comment on those and share additional strengths. And then we move on to the next person. And it usually takes about an hour per person. Now, we do 360 reviews in Student Maid with our students, but because we would never do that in a group setting because there's so many people, we will take a team of 2 or 3 people who work closest together, and they will have a 360 review with a facilitator.
With a workforce that spends more time at customer sites than in your office, how do you create that culture of belonging and camaraderie?
Well, when I first began in the business, I did a lot of research, looked at other cleaning companies, and found that many models, just one person would come to clean a house. And I knew from cleaning myself that it's really hard to clean a whole house by yourself, but it's also kind of lonely. Usually the clients aren't home, so you're by yourself. And if you're cleaning 2, 3, 4 houses in a day, you're pretty lonely. So I decided with Student Maid, to have teams of 2. And it's more expensive to have 2 people in a home, but I thought that would help, just what you said, because we don't have that time where we're all in the office together. So there needed to be this other piece that would allow people to really build relationships and connections. And so we always send our teams in groups of 2, and then we do something every quarter called Development Day, where we actually close and we don't serve any customers, and we bring the whole company together, and we focus on leadership development and relationship building. And we do that at least 4 times a year. So those are the things that we do.
You mentioned earlier that you speak at not only conferences, but you go and you provide some consulting services to companies that may have already a good culture in place or may not have such a great culture in place. What are some of the similarities that you see within the organizations that you interact with? Some of the challenges that they all face, whether that they have a good culture or they're struggling in building their culture?
Yeah, I think, well, first, the thing that they all have in common is that they really care about their people, and they really want to build an amazing environment for them. And I think for me, that's like, if that piece isn't there, if the reason that I'm being hired is because we need to have a better culture to hit results or to hit these numbers, or if the focus really isn't on the people, it's not a good fit for me. So everybody that I'm working with really cares about their people and really wants this environment for them. I think that challenges, I hear a lot, people are siloed, departments are siloed. I think part of that has to do with remote work, especially in big companies when you've got a lot of people. It's like, how do you make sure that people still feel connected and like they're collaborating on one big team, even when you've got all these smaller teams kind of operating independently? I think empowerment is big. I think when someone is really good at their job, we just reward them with more work. And then next thing you know, they're leading a team of people and they've got no training at all on how to do that. And so a lot of it is, how do we equip our leaders to really empower their people and really trust them and inspire, accountability and responsibility. A lot of leadership development. So, and I think it all, again, boils down to the fact that we're not taught, and we can't expect to do a job and be good at it if we're not taught or given the tools to do it.
It's always a challenge for organizations to reward their top performance with a promotion and some sort of leadership or management role when they may not be fully prepared or trained for this, or they may just have the right soft skills to actually be a true and a real leader. Yeah. It's not because you are a high performer that you're going to be able to lead a team effectively.
Yep. There's a book, Radical Candor. Mm-hmm. Kim Scott is the author, a great book. And she has a part in the book where she talks about that some people, really do want the next step and they do want that leadership position. And then there's some people who are completely happy and not having that and don't want that. And it's really important to understand who's who and ask people, what are you hoping for? What does your dream trajectory look like here? Because I think so many times we make decisions for people without involving them. And half the time what we think they want isn't even what they want.
Earlier in the conversation, you mentioned that when you started the company, after a while, it grew exponentially and to the point where it was losing its culture and the foundation of why you wanted to build a company in the first place. How did it happen, and what were some of the adjustments that you made along the way beyond just reducing the workforce?
Well, it happened because we kept taking work and big contracts that paid a lot of money, but the conditions were tough. It was like that, 800 apartment in 21 day thing. Just imagine those all the time. And there's a huge demand for cleaning companies that can handle volume, especially because there's so much turnover in cleaning. So we have a really great reputation. We are known for really, retaining our people. And so a lot of people wanted to work with us. A lot of companies wanted to contract us. And so we got in the position by just saying yes to everyone. And then the way we got out of it is by really looking at our clients and looking at which ones bring us joy, which ones do we love working with, which ones treat our employees well, which ones are profitable, like really profitable, which ones are, maybe profitable, but they don't treat us well and they're not good to our people. And we said goodbye to the ones who didn't really fit our culture. And it was hard. We finished out all of our contracts. We didn't leave anyone hanging by any means. But what was interesting is in every conversation we had where we were telling a client we couldn't work with them anymore, they weren't upset. They said, we understand and we actually admire your company for making this choice. And so, yeah, it was really scary, but we said no and that's all we did.
For those who are listening to us and maybe in the early stages of building or scaling the company, what would be some of the main recommendations or tips that you would give them?
Well, I think definitely take time to work on the business and not in it. Even if that means you have to not go into the office until a certain time, to actually get away and disconnect, to really think. And that's something that I had to do a lot because every time I'd walk into my company, everyone would want to talk to me. And I wanted to be the leader that was always there for everybody. So I would go to a coffee shop in the morning, work for a couple hours, just strategizing, thinking, planning, and then I would go in. And that really helped me. So I had time to work on the business. Another thing is reading. I read and still read so much. I actually took a speed reading class early on and did that with the sole purpose of being able to read more in one sitting. But I read all kinds of books, not all in the business section. I browse in a bookstore. I look at all different categories and I find inspiration in things that I would just never even expect. So I think reading is important to shape your philosophy about business culture, leadership, all that. And then I think surround yourself with people who are kind of in a similar spot. I was a part of a group where there were 5 of us and all entrepreneurs, all different companies, different industries, around the same age in terms of like how old our companies were. But we would meet once a month and we would just talk about what was working well and what wasn't. And it was just it was therapeutic. It was a place where we could really bring what was really happening and real problems and challenges and really talk through them. And so get a group of people, find a couple people who are maybe in the same position as you, but in different industries and meet once a month or every other month and just come with what's working, what's not, and let the conversation go from there.
Is it difficult as a very young entrepreneur to have credibility, not only with the people that you hire, but with all the different people that you may have to work with, vendors and getting a loan at the bank and all those different entities and organizations that you have to work with no matter what?
Yes, at the beginning it was. And it was, trying to get a loan, people were like, what are you? You're a kid, you should be in school. What are you doing? And especially the fact that it was a cleaning company. People were cautioning me, saying, I don't know if you really know what you're getting yourself into. But I didn't let those no's affect me. If anything, I think I used them as fuel to make me want to try harder. And somewhere along the way, I think when I started going out and speaking to other companies, I kind of felt like it was this imposter syndrome. Like I sort of felt like I didn't belong, like what makes me the person that's on this stage? And I knew people in the audience were questioning why I was there, why, she owns a cleaning company, why is she speaking at our company? And she's young and she's a female. And what I realized is I deserve to be there. I built a company that's still in business and it's in a really hard industry. We've done a really incredible thing. I've written a book. I've spoken on probably more than 1,000 stages in my lifetime. Like I had to believe in myself. I had to believe that I deserved to be there. And once I made that switch in my brain, my mind, everything changed. And I think it's our mindset. And I think we only allow our age, our gender, our lack of experience, or whatever it may be, we only allow it to be an obstacle if we see it as an obstacle. And so I think we just have to, it's kind of like believe in what you're selling and other people will believe it.
It's interesting what you're saying because, in many organizations we talk about unconscious bias and how you need to get away from your filters to be able to interact and engage with other people, but also it affects your own personal unconscious bias affects the way you see yourself. And that's exactly what happened to you.
Yep, exactly.
So before we end our conversation today, I just want to ask you some fun questions and some rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
So that our audience get to know you a bit more, I would say, intimately.
Love it.
You mentioned that when you were in college, you wanted to go and work on Wall Street. What other jobs did you dream of growing up?
My dad's an attorney, and I always, like, my backup plan was to be a lawyer. But he represents, he's a land use law attorney, but in his previous, he used to represent people who couldn't represent themselves. And so it was so cool to watch him do that. And he just did a lot of good things for people. So I always saw myself maybe doing something like that. And then my other thing is a private investigator. I am like obsessed with crime shows. I don't know what it is, but I could see myself being an investigator.
All right. What is your favorite crime show or movie then?
Oh, man. I don't have a favorite. I don't like fake ones. I like watching documentaries, Making a Murderer. I'm sure everyone's heard of that one. Things like that. And I think what I like is the psychology of it. It's like understanding how people think or why they've done the things they've done or why people think this way. So maybe that's the reason behind it. But yeah, I'm obsessed.
Yeah, and I see the connection with your leadership style as well. It all makes sense.
Yes.
If you were to invite someone famous or a historical figure to dinner, who would you pick and why?
Oh, man. So I won't pick a famous person. I would pick my grandparents on my dad's side because they passed away when I was young, and they were so entrepreneurial, and I think maybe that's where I got my entrepreneurial spirit from. But I never really heard their story, so I would love to just talk to them more about their immigrants and they moved to the U.S. and opened a few businesses, and I would just love to hear more about how they did that and why they did that, and it's kind of like the piece of the puzzle that's missing for me in my life.
This is very nice. Very nice. What turns you on?
Oh, well, I think in any situation, like I love when people are vulnerable. If you are willing to be vulnerable, I want to be your friend. If you, like my fiance, what I love about him is he's always honest and wears his heart on his sleeve. Love it. In my company, you're vulnerable. I want you there. So I think, vulnerability is a huge thing for me and one of the qualities I value most in people.
What turns you off?
Ego. When people have an ego. And maybe I would also say a lack of self-awareness.
Okay, it sounds like you travel quite a bit. What is the favorite city that you've been to?
Oh, that's a hard one. Well, I went to this little school one time. It was a campus in La Grande, Oregon, in the middle of nowhere. I had to fly to Portland and then take another plane, and I thought I was going to die. It was like 4-seater plane. So scary. But I finally got to this little, and it was the most beautiful waterfalls everywhere you look. Like small town, one restaurant, one grocery store, one everything. And then I had a really good friend from college who met me there, and we went from there to LA, and we drove all like in the redwoods and Big Sur, and it was just such a great and beautiful trip.
La Grande, Oregon. I lived for 2 years in Portland, and I have no idea what La Grande is.
See? Yeah.
Okay, good. What sound or noise do you love?
I love rain. And actually, when I don't know, rain makes me creative. It makes me want to write or think. And even when I'm on planes, I have a little app on my phone that plays rain, and I'll put my headphones in, and that's what I listen to when I'm working on a plane.
Very neat. What sound or noise do you hate?
Oh, when you're screeching on a chalkboard. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yes.
Like, I'm sure everyone hates that sound.
Yeah, I did too. What's your favorite word?
My favorite word would probably be compassion. I feel like I use it multiple times a day.
What is your least favorite word?
So toothpaste, but this is why. When I was in first grade, I was in a spelling bee, and there were 2 people left. It was me and someone else. And the word was toothpaste. And I spelled it correctly, but I said TOOTH space PASTE. Mm-hmm. And I got disqualified. And it was devastating. And so whenever I hear that word, it just brings me back to the spelling bee.
That's hilarious. I love it. What is the way for our listeners to follow you and Student Maid on social media?
Well, for Student Maid, you can just search Student Maid. We have an Instagram, a Facebook page, and then, of course, our website. For me, same thing, Kristen Hadeed. I've got LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and then a website, KristenHadeed.com. And the book can be found anywhere books are sold, Amazon, all that.
Awesome. Any last word of advice or wisdom for our listeners?
I think it's probably the send-off that's at the end of my book. It's that we're all human and we all mess up. And the only way to really learn how to lead or to get better at something is by doing it wrong. And that's what teaches you, you learn from that, and that's how you know what to do next time. And so I think we just have to give ourselves a little more grace and permission to get it wrong and learn to see it as a lesson and a gift, because really that's what it is. And if you think about the 45 people walking out on me that day, yes, it was a huge failure, but had it not happened, there's no way I would even be talking to you on this podcast today. Right.
And I'm glad you made this mistake so that we could talk today. Thank you so much, Kristen, for being with us.
Anytime.
Thanks for tuning in to the EX Podcast. If you want to learn more, visit our website at expodcast.com. If you want to find out more about our next conferences, go to exsummit.com. Finally, you can also find my manifesto on business to employee or B2E branding at b2ebranding.co. See you next week.